I have no knowledge. I would doubt that. It would frankly fucking impossible. Impossible.
Does that sound strange at all? It sounds a little strange to us as readers and listeners that a home that is not yours would be affirmatively guarded by your security.
Me too.
Ms. Farmer says that she, in the wake of her assault, reached out to the county sheriff's office and that she was told, quote, "We work for Wexner." And the sheriff's office confirmed that at that time they were contracted to assist with your security detail. Do you have any sense of why that would have been the case?
Same objection to the hearsay answer.
No, the closest I could get to that would be sometime people who work for county security, Columbus Police Force. We would use part-time police, like at entrances or patrolling, but not. They wouldn't have been employees of ours. I mean, so it's possible, but I didn't. It's weird. I don't know the sheriff.
Could you elaborate for a moment on what would that part-time role have been? Like a special event? They would be at the entrance?
Yeah, it would have been special events. Yeah, that's very accurate.
Okay. Ms. Farmer says that summer, when she wanted to leave the home, she had to call the main house, your house, and ask for your wife's permission. Do you have any knowledge about whether that's accurate?
I doubt that it's accurate, and I have no knowledge.
And I think you said earlier, but just to make sure, when did you first become aware of Ms. Farmer's allegations?
In the press.
Did your security staff or anyone else on your staff ever alert you to any unusual incident or event involving Mr. Epstein at the home that we've been discussing?
None.
Are you aware of any other incidents related to sexual assault or misconduct where somebody on your property or Mr. Epstein's former property adjacent called the sheriff's office for help?
Absolutely not. Not aware.
I'd like to touch on Victoria's Secret and Mr. Epstein presenting himself as a recruiter. Again, I know it's been discussed earlier. I'll try to cover new ground to the extent possible. I think you had testified that you were alerted to that issue once. It's been publicly reported that in 1993, President Cynthia Fetus Fields, who was an executive at Victoria's Secret at the time, was alerted that Epstein was holding himself out as a Victoria's Secret scout, and that you were alerted to the problem and, quote, said that you would stop it. Does that sound like the time frame in which you recall being told about the issue?
Maybe it didn't. It could have been. I was trying to think when she worked in the business and when she left. But yeah, probably right. I don't know for sure.
What do you specifically recall about when you were alerted to the issue? In other words, who approached you and what did they describe specifically?
Something like Jeffrey's trying to pick up women, and he says he's a Victoria's Secret talent scout. And I said, that's terrible, or the nonsense, or I'll put a stop to it. Something like that, because it could be possible, I think, in my memory, but I didn't believe it. But I know I called him up and said, are you, Jeffrey, what is going on? He said, do you think I'm stupid? I said, because I hope not, because if not, you'll be dead. It was a very brief conversation. I remember him being definite about it didn't happen, and it wasn't a long conversation. I was mad.
So it was a blanket denial from Mr. Epstein.
That's very accurate.
And did you believe or were you convinced by his denial at the time?
At the time, yes, I did believe it.
So is it right that you were no longer upset following that conversation because you believed that he had not, in fact, held himself out as a scout?
That's accurate, yes. That's how I felt.
Do you recall whether you had the impression that your executives simply made the story up? Or...
recall, just knowing how I think about things, I probably would have said this is just Jeffrey single. You know, it's a thing to say. A rumor could get started. I got to chase it down because God forbid that anybody was in the business, let alone outside the business, was dating people in the business or dating models or recruiting them or any of the stuff that we now know is true. I would have fired him on the spot.
In May 1997, a young woman named Alicia Arden says that she was introduced to a man who identified himself as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. That was Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. Epstein allegedly invited Miss Arden to his hotel room in Santa Monica, California, to audition for the catalog. When she arrived, Mr. Epstein grabbed her, tried to undress her, and said he wanted to, quote, manhandle her. Miss Arden fled in tears and filed a police report. It's one of the earliest allegations that are known against Mr. Epstein.
Yeah.
Were you alerted to this sexual assault at the time?
Same objection to hearsay, but go ahead.
Kind of the same answer. I don't know how I knew about it, and called Jeffrey, like, what the hell's going on, Jeffrey? And I was like, do you think I'm stupid? Yeah. Like, this was a bad girl, I was on a date, she made all this stuff up. You don't think I'd behave this way, would you? And I hope not, was probably what I said, because I couldn't believe that anybody that I knew would behave like that.
And what you're describing, is that the original single conversation you described earlier, or is that a separate conversation with Mr. Epstein about the issue?
I'm a little confused. This question about the lady in the hotel in New York was one conversation, and the notion or the discussion about Jeffrey's interviewing models, I think, was a separate one, and they didn't happen simultaneously.
I understand. It sounds like that might have been about 4 years apart from each other.
You could tell me 4 years or 4 months. I don't remember.
So it sounds like at that point there would have been at least 2 conversations with Mr. Epstein about the broader Victoria's Secret issue. In 2004, a woman named Elizabetta Tai had a similar experience. She was invited to Mr. Epstein's New York home under the impression that he would be able to get her a job as a Victoria's Secret model. Mr. Epstein apparently, allegedly, undressed and handed her a vibrator. Ms. Tai threw the vibrator at his head and ran out of the room. Were you made aware of this allegation at the time?
I never heard this story before.
In 2005, the New York Post ran an article describing a Romanian model who allegedly landed a gig at Wexner's Victoria's Secret brand thanks to Mr. Epstein. Did you have any knowledge about models who actually acquired jobs at Victoria's Secret directly or indirectly through Mr. Epstein?
No, but I didn't meet, interview, or pick models. That wasn't what I did, and no one in the business did.
But just to phrase it clearly, to your knowledge, did Victoria's Secret ever hire or contract with a model at the recommendation of Jeffrey Epstein?
No, I can't imagine they did. No, I wouldn't know if they did, but the way that we handled our marketing, it couldn't have happened. I think I would have known, because it just wasn't the practice.
Could I ask one follow-up question? With respect to that second conversation and the young woman named Alicia Arden, I know they were a few years apart, but if you recall, was there any part of you that doubted whether Mr. Epstein had been truthful in his denial with you the first time?
At the time, I don't think I connected them. You can't imagine how busy I was. I was engaged, I was married, I'm running 20 businesses. I never made the connection.
And as far as you recall, those are the only 2 times that you were alerted to Mr. Epstein holding himself out as affiliated with Victoria's Secret.
Those stories, yeah.
It's been reported that following Mr. Epstein's arrest in 2019, The limited company, L Brands, retained two different law firms were retained to investigate Epstein's affiliation with the company. We're not aware of those reports ever having been made public. To your knowledge, were those investigations completed?
When was it?
This would be after the arrest, so in 2019 and 2020.
I'm not aware that the board investigated Jeffrey.
And I think the first law firm investigation was for the board, broadly speaking, and then some individual board members engaged a law firm to perform a second investigation. But it sounds like you have no knowledge of either investigation.
I found out about 2 weeks ago that from one of our ex-board members that he'd hired Kroll to investigate Jeffrey, and I never knew it.
Could you elaborate on that just a moment? In other words, a board member describe what exactly?
Well, this was 2 weeks ago. That he was worried about Jeffrey, and he asked Jules Kroll to investigate him.
Is Jules Kroll
An investigator, white-collar criminal. He was a Justice Department, FBI kind of a guy. Started his own, I think it's the largest international and private investigation firm in the world. And so he said, and I said, so what happened? And he said, he didn't think Jeffrey was a good guy. And I said, what else? He said, that's all he would say. He said, just not a good guy. And he said, he asked him for specifics. And Jules said, I don't have any specifics. He's just not a good guy, whatever that meant.
Do you recall approximately what time frame the Kroll review was undertaken, or how was it described to you?
Well, the way it was described to me is the board member asked Jules Kroll. He didn't tell me it was a board thing. And so it must have been, I don't know, about 19 or 20, because I know when I retired, I know when and I think I know when COVID was and all those things that happened, but I had no knowledge of it. And I was kind of, frankly, it made no difference to me, but I was kind of surprised that somebody on the board would investigate somebody and not tell me, or, as the founder, principal, whatever. They didn't, which is probably a good thing.
So for the two law firm investigations I described and this separate Kroll inquiry, it sounds like you had no awareness of those when they occurred.
Nothing.
I would like to introduce Minority Exhibit J.
Do one more.
Yeah.
So, as you can see, this is an email from June of 2008, right around the time that Epstein pled guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution. And you said to him, quote, Abigail told me the result. All I can say is I feel sorry. You violated your own #1 rule, always be careful. And Epstein replied, no excuse. So clearly, either you knew or Epstein had said to you that his #1 rule was to be careful. What, in your recollection, was he so careful about?
About being honest and stealing from me, us, these criminal, terrible, horrible things that he did. And I don't know what prompted me, because when I saw this, I think I was just giving him the finger. It's something in the news, something. Maybe it was the fact that Abigail told me, and I was cooking on it, and I just wanted, like, you sold yourself as a careful, honest fiduciary, and you completely robbed us, did all these terrible things.
It sounds like you, at least at the time, understood that Mr. Epstein, it sounds like Mr. Epstein would say that his number one rule was to be careful. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. What do you recall that being in the context of when Mr. Epstein would say that? Why was that his number one rule? I'll phrase it that way.
Well, again, he alleged himself to be a fiduciary, and I'm always careful about my clients. You know, I don't do risky investments. I'm not looking for, I wasn't looking for cleverness. I was looking for accuracy, conservative, like you just run things really smoothly. And Jeffrey would say, don't worry, I'm always very careful. And that might have meant to be not abusive to my admin or to be prompt and accurate with tax returns. He's just careful because that's what you would expect. If my personal attorney would have said, "Don't worry, I'm always careful on your account," that would ring, comfortably for me. And complete crook.
And you touched on it, but in terms of what you can recall about how you felt at the time, the crimes, even the crime that he pled to, was not insignificant. It involved a minor. Do you recall? I mean, that would seem not to necessarily be the product of simply not being careful. So do you recall whether you felt anger, shock, or simply how could you have been so careless?
I don't remember how I felt. Probably anger that a person in a trust position could be so mistrusted, so crooked, so bad.
As far as you can recall, when was the last time you spoke with Mr. Epstein?
Well, it was probably sometime before I gave him the finger. So it probably was in 07 or 08. Sometimes when he got in trouble, in my mind, he died.
Well, definitely at this point, you two were in communication, so that's the middle of 2008.
You asked him when he spoke to him.
Sure, I'll clarify. Any form of electronic or verbal communication.
I wouldn't remember that I did this. What I remember is when I found out how bad his sexual behavior was, and he was stealing from us, dead.
If you recall, I think you had said that he initially framed the investigation to you as involving a massage and an overzealous police chief. At least that was what your counsels represented to DOJ. Do you recall that?
I don't recall it. I don't know that he told Abigail that, and she told me.
No, not what she told
Okay,
you.
I don't know. How I know, I don't know.
Do you recall when you first became aware of his crimes involving minors?
I don't recall.
There is evidence that Mr. Epstein tried to get in touch with you in 2010 and 2011. We don't know whether that continued later. Do you have any recollection of having any form of contact with him after 2008?
Nothing. I'm positive that I had no communication of any kind. I keep repeating that from my point of view, he died. I didn't want to even think about it. Yeah, man.
Starting to wrap up, are there other individuals from Mr. Epstein's orbit at the time that you think we should talk to who might have an understanding of Mr. Epstein's crimes?
What I'm thinking is that he referenced several people that I never met. Do I think they might have information? Possibly, but I don't know whether he made it up or he really did it.
Do you recall some examples of people he would reference?
Yeah, he'd say, I was in Aspen last week. And I'd say, oh, what were you doing in Aspen? And he said, the family that owns Fidelity in Massachusetts, Johnson. He said, I worked for Abigail Johnson, and I was there, talking to her about their family situation. But he could have been making it up. But at the time, I said, geez, he works for the Johnson family. They're pretty sophisticated. He would talk about the founders of Google, that they were friends, and he'd visit them. He would talk about, you got to come out to San Francisco. You should meet the Amazon guy.
Bezos.
Bezos. And I said,